let me start just by just a quick word about why I'm here and who I am, and why I'm going to kind of stay to the side and butt in with questions every now and then. I'm Corey Liz-Kirst. I'm the Director of Operations for the CVA. I have a really funny sort of history with CVA. I was the curator here back in when it was GAL, Greensboro Artists League. Some of you might remember that, back in around 2000. And I went on, had my own business as a writer and editor, kept involved with the arts, missed being around art with a physical feeling. Some of y'all that might make sense too, just being around it, I have to. And when this opportunity to become involved with the CVA again came up, I thought yes. No matter what it is, yes, I want to be part of this, because I think this organization has provided such a wonderful platform for artists at all different levels of their careers. And I think the staff that we have now and that we're building are really passionate about what we're trying to do. And these people here, we invited, I think Devin invited because she sees each of you having a similar passion to what we have. Everybody in this panel has done and will continue to do amazing things with art in our community. And so with that said about me and the organization, let me just start with Eliza and let you introduce yourselves and maybe just a quick word about why you said yes to come here.
So my name's Eliza. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I'm with the Greensboro Mural Project. And I think part of why I said yes and our group said yes after talking about it was this is not a normal space for us to be in. And so we were like, oh, this is new, it's weird, lean into that. And I think that a lot of the different art groups that are represented here aren't necessarily, I think, first and foremost thought of as being gallery-based arts for various reasons that we can or cannot analyze later.
Yes. My name is Darlene McClinton. I'm here representing the Artist Block, arts venue where creative minds meet. I am a visual artist and muralist in the city of Greensboro, and I said yes because I support the CBA and I just love the arts. I'm an artist first and I'm a teacher second, so anything dealing with the arts, I want to kind of be wherever art is, I want to be.
My name is Guy Portel. I also use they, them, their pronouns. I'm here with Elsewhere Museum and Artist Residency in downtown Greensboro. As Eliza said, Elsewhere is not your traditional gallery-style art space. It is set within a former 3-4 thrift store. And so, because we bring in artists from outside of Greensboro to come live with us, I feel like we have a duty to serve our communities, and our entire organization does. And so that's one of the reasons why we said yes.
Thank you for doing it.
My name is Tahi Zalal. I'm the Campus Activation Strategist at Revolution Mill. And I said yes because I thought initially it was that Devin had come to me and I thought she wanted to have a panel discussion at Revolution Mill. So I was like, yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to have you. Come on. And then she's like, no, I want you on the panel. And I was like, okay. That's a little weird about public speaking, but really just my job is to bring people to Revolution Mill, and one of the things that I do, in addition to the community-oriented events, is to run Central Gallery, which is gallery space.
I'm Edie Carpenter, and I'm the head curator at Green Hill across the hall. Opened in 1974, Green Hill is one of the oldest continually running contemporary art spaces in North Carolina with the Durham Art Guild, which is a little bit older. We've moved to several different sites, but I've been at Green Hill only at the Cultural Arts Center. Our 5,000 square foot gallery is a wonderful space for artists. We have about 15 exhibitions a year in the main gallery, the Alcove Gallery, and in our museum shop. Our outreach and education programs reach almost 30,000 people, including many children, a year through long-running programs like Artists in Schools. I accepted this invitation because I'm most directly involved with reaching out and looking at artists' works. We have 2 upcoming opportunities at Green Hill. One of them, the Open NCR Review, which still has 4 places in which I sit down with artists and look at their slides and have discussions with them on a Saturday afternoon here. It's going to be in 2 Saturdays from now. We also have an exhibition that we're about to go live with on our website. It's a juried exhibition. It's a re-edition of an exhibition that we did in 1999 called Constant Change. It will be an 8-person exhibition in our main art gallery. One of the jurors is Jennifer Dassel, an assistant curator at the North Carolina Museum of Art. Another of the jurors is Andre Leon Gray, who was an original artist in the first 1999 show, and he'll be coming back to, he's lived and worked in the Raleigh area for these years, and he's going to be coming back to jury this show. So
He sits at the front desk at my dad's shop.
yeah. And so that's another reason that I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for
having me.
I am Cassandra Liuzzo. I use she, her pronouns, and I run Shelf Life Art and Supply Company, which is an art supply store here in Greensboro. I opened in 2014 because we had a need and I wanted to fill it, I guess. Nobody else did it, so I did it. And I also have a classroom space where we offer classes for all ages, and the unique thing about my art supply store is that we sell both new and used supplies. So that's another need that I saw as an artist myself, was, when you accumulate all of these supplies that you may not use again. So you can bring them to me and I give store credit in exchange for pre-owned art supplies. So the reason that I said yes to this is because I believe in creating a more intentional community around our art scene in Greensboro. There's been a lot of sort of disparate groups of people doing things around town, and it's all wonderful. One of the things that I really enjoy getting to do at Shelf Life is because all the artists come to me for their supplies, is connecting with people and connecting people to other opportunities.
Well, thank you all for that. And I'll just put in another word here. We had a panel last week, and what worked great is I don't want y'all to all feel like you have to just sit and listen. If you have questions, if you have comments, please jump in at any time. That's what this is about. I think all of these panelists are saying, we want to hear, we want to collaborate, we want to know what people are thinking and how to meet needs and what's out there. Likewise, panel, don't feel like you're stuck to your chair. If you need to stand up and stretch or talk while you stand up, that's fine too. And I would also like to suggest that we kind of consider this a safe space to have discussions. And for my part, if anybody who's had knowledge of CVA has questions or constructive criticism or ideas for us, I'd love to hear it. I have a feeling our panelists have the same kind of approach to being open and hearing as well as talking. So does that sound fair to everybody? Good.
I have a quick question. It looks like there was a handout maybe that we missed or...
Yep, we will bring some around just for anybody who missed them. We have a little handout that kind of gives a brief bio on each of the panelists.
Does anyone else need one?
Oh, okay. So I think I would love to just start out with a prompt that it's interesting to us and to me that art is everywhere. And I love that it seems to me like there's maybe an absence of an organized public commitment to the arts, that there have been a lot of people and groups who have jumped into that. both in a very organic and grassroots kind of way and in a very formal way, keeping with more traditional gallery and museum structures, but still trying to acknowledge that sort of public upswelling. So I guess I'd love to just open that up to the panel and any questions from the group about your perceptions of what kind of has sparked that and why organizations like yours exist in this environment. Anyone want to jump in, or do I have to? Eliza, you look like you had a thought.
Oh, I had a few. I was hoping the first one to go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that art, well, one, art is everywhere. You know, like architecture, layout of like public spaces, it's all art. But it's interesting just thinking about within Greensboro the way that like art, or even specifically murals, have you know, like kind of taken over in the past not quite a decade. But just thinking about 7+ years ago when the Greensboro mural project started, you know, there were no murals. There was like maybe a couple of weird ones in like your kids' elementary schools. And that was it. But then it's interesting as also like the city of Greensboro has been trying to do more investment in economic development in the downtown area. The way that also now we have like private developers who are funding the arts as a like an economic driver, as opposed less so, I would argue, to the actual creative process and like the community process of arts. Whereas like with our murals, they're always community driven and like place specific. And it's just interesting. I mean, I like it when people paint in unconventional places, but it's also just interesting the way that murals in particular have taken this really interesting, kind of like weirdly political development related role in our city.
Right.
That's just one thought.
Well, I think you're raising an interesting point, and I don't want to get too political here either, but thinking about investment in the arts and whose job that is, whose role that is in a community, and I think you've brought up something important, that there's some really impressive murals. They probably cost a very large amount of money. Making sure there are projects that you or I can be part of in a much more natural way, either in the concept or in the actual making of it. So I know Darlene, you've done a good bit. Talk a little bit about your experience.
I really enjoy public art just in general, but being an artist that's able to create public art, I'm looking at it as a wall and also a way to connect with the community. So a lot of times as an artist, I go into the community, I do a lot of research with the community, find out what they want. If they have a lot of vandalism in the area, we involve the children so they can feel a part, take ownership. It just basically brings people, the community, everybody together. It's a beautification part about it, it's an appreciation part about it, and I love it because it's like a twofold blessing. It's blessing the community, but it's also, I know I make more money as a muralist than I'm selling an individual painting. So I just finished one yesterday in the Burlington area, which I was very excited about. And then recently Walmart just reached out to me to do one for advertisement to bring more people into the doors. So now I like that the corporate world is basically starting to see art as a way of communicating, relating to the community, letting people know you're welcome here, come on in. So I guess as a muralist, I think it's something special, and I do agree with, I don't want to mess up your name, Eliza, how it's really, helping the community, and it's a great way to connect all generations together, older and the younger generation. And it's a PSA statement if you really think about content behind your work.
So what do y'all think about the ownership part of community-based art? How do you kind of alluded to that, Darlene, just that when you get kids involved or when you get generations involved. Does any of y'all have any observations about that angle?
Well, I would have to add that intention is something that is very important. So not only is it my role to do this, is it the time to do this, is it the place to do this, and then I guess being informed by the communities that are around you and the communities that you're part of, and having intention behind what communities do I want to bring to the table too, and being intentional about it. Yeah, I think definitely how we do the work is part of the work for sure.
Do you think it has to be the right person for the community, or do you think a person can learn to be the right person?
Well, there is an arts organizer named Nia Umoja, who's based out of Jackson, Mississippi. She is the co-founder and director of the New West Jackson Cooperative Center. And they take blighted out houses and they turn them into community spaces and art spaces. And she has a quote that she always says that I always love to bring up, not only in amplifying her work, but it's also a great quote, that change happens at the speed of trust. And so if it's not your job to do it, there is a reason why it is not your job. And I think you have to respond to the fact that it's not your job, and you have to really analyze that and internalize that, and be intentional about who you're reaching out to and how as well.
I think that's a difficult journey for a lot of people who want to be involved and want to help and see areas where they can do that but don't know how to appropriately do that or where they do fit. And I guess I sort of feel like we in the arts community have a responsibility to share that information and provide those opportunities wherever they may be, to be essentially like clearinghouses of information. And if we know of projects, something we try to do here, if we know of projects that maybe they have a political bent, that we kind of send people who have an interest or something to say in that area, or certain community-based projects, to have people who are going to understand that community and be, I hate to keep using the word appropriate, I hate that word, but to be compassionate and to be empathetic and to be able to achieve that ultimate purpose. So how about a Revolution Mill? What kind of, I bet you see all kinds of community.
So like I was saying about my role there, do a lot of these community-oriented events, like motorcycle rally, a vintage motorcycle rally once a month. I have Mill Day, which is an annual event that's coming up in September, and we have Fitness in the Yard. Hand-to-hand market is there now, and the Greensboro Zine Fest, which was a couple of weeks ago, happened there, which was probably the biggest turnout. I had nothing to do with it. I offered the space. But Tristan Miller, who organizes it, she's a powerhouse in the arts community. But so my role, like I got this job April of 2017, and before that I was a paper conservator, and I was conserving art for 17 years. And I got laid off and didn't want to go into private practice, so I was like, well, golly, what am I going to do? And sort of did a variety of odd jobs for a year. And in my volunteer life, I was on the Weatherspoon Art Museum board and helping with organize their events, and doing that solely as a volunteer. And I was like, well, that's something that I'll keep in the back of my head. And then just by chance, I met the former project manager or project developer, whatever, at Revolution Mill, just through a mutual friend from a thing down at what is it called? I can't think of the name, but it's down on Lewis Street.
It works.
No, it's on.
Gibbs?
No, it's the headquarters, HQ Greensboro. HQ Greensboro. And anyway, I just struck up a conversation, and then next thing I know, it was like I was on this proto interview tour at Revolution Mill, and it just was sort of a snowball effect. Anyway, fast forward, I got the job, which was amazing, and I was so excited about it. And so, thrown into this job, working, doing these events, figuring it out as I go along. I was used to a committee. Now I'm doing it pretty much by myself. And, well, then there's Central Gallery, a space that just really didn't have anything going on. I had been once before, Bianca Polii, in the audience, had a show, and it was just a one-night only thing, and just that was so much fun. And there was nothing going on with the space. There was no plan for it. I'm like, well, maybe I can do something. I know a lot of artists in Greensboro and beyond, and, maybe let's see. And I was given the green light, and I've used this a lot. To me, the expression is it's the icing on the cake. Well, I prefer the cake. It's the cake to me. The icing is the rest of my job. But like just having that art, being in the art world in the preservation sense for so long, being art history major and involved with the arts just on the fun level, it just was something that, just worked out. Like it fell into my lap. And anyway.
Do you feel like you, in your space, and Edie, this is a little bit of a question for you too, being in this building, how do y'all feel like you continue to draw sort of the same people over and over again? Do you feel like you're seeing new people coming into your spaces? Do you make an intentional effort to reach out in different ways, kind of like we're trying to do? I guess either or both of you might have some perspective.
I do. I mean, as far as bringing in artists.
Well, artists and
just
visitors. too.
Well, that's my
Appreciate
job,
it.
is like bring in new faces.
Right.
And also get my friends to come back.
Well, yeah.
And the people who have been there before. But yeah.
What kind of intentionality, I guess, is behind those, how you're making those, trying to make those avenues? Putting you on the spot, but. And if you want to think, Edie might have some.
Well, I can jump in. The first part of your question was about the community of this building, and I do find that, just being in the Cultural Arts Center brings new people into Green Hill. Our last exhibition, Beauty of the Beast, a gentleman came into the gallery and I approached him. He was here for a guitar lesson. Well, he walked out purchasing 3 frogs.
Oh, wow.
So, that was just kind of really fortuitous, but, that is the sort of contact that can happen just by being here in this, community of arts organizations, and they're not all, the visual arts tend to be, on this floor. My personal perspective, I believe, is probably predicated by my career before Green Hill, working for a for-profit commercial art gallery in 2 major cities. And I think that Green Hill was established by artists. It was founded by artists, and it was the artists felt like that they needed a professional exhibition space. And if you look around, if we look around us at the art that's on the walls here, you can say that the majority of the works here can be bought and sold, and that's one of the primary ways that Green Hill supports the most number of artists is through actually art sales, and it's really a direct kind of avenue in a way of supporting this work, which I know by my own experience, is often not remunerated, takes place over years alone, and often not without a real response from public. And that's the second, I think, really great thing that Green Hill offers is a connection between the artwork and the public. We do a couple of programs that are really kind of like directed towards the community and bringing in multiple communities, and I look at them as multi-generational events. One of them was during a big drawing show, and the event was called Drawn In, and it went on all night. We had, basically we have a lot of different things going on at the same time, And they tend to bring in hundreds of people into the gallery to drink, eat, draw. We had dancers, people were drawing them. We had, a clothesline all the way through the gallery. People were hanging up their works. We had, a lot going on. We had a wind drawing that was connected to a weather station on the roof of the building that was, continually registering the wind. And there was a lot going on. And we thought another one of those big community programs that we had was called Housewarming, and it was during an exhibition that was a thematic exhibition around domesticity in art. So that was also fun, and we had a big casserole contest. We had 60 casseroles, and everything got eaten. And we have an upcoming program like that we're going to be doing around a food exhibition. So that should be really fun. So, to answer your question, yes, we do directed kinds of programs. At Green Hill, they tend to be the space of a night. That is...
So I think we had a question here.
Well, my name is Gavin Wall. I'm more of like a wannabe content cultivator of sorts. And one thing that I've noticed, especially in Greensboro, is that there's a lot of people that not necessarily verbal communication, but in blending things together, we're having a hard time doing that. I'm actually a music producer by trade, I guess. And so one thing I've noticed is that in typical art spaces and in even different types of spaces, there's a lot of people who are starting to try and push boundaries. Especially talking about murals. I think I saw somewhere over there was a quilting, right there. So there's blending styles, blending things together that don't necessarily typically go together, like music and art or art and food and things of that nature. And I'm trying to figure out not necessarily just how you feel about stuff like that, but how how accepted is it when it comes to trying to blend things that don't typically go together, and how are people kind of trying to work towards creating spaces for people to be able to do that comfortably?
Great.
So I did want to kind of answer your question and then kind of maybe tie it back to what we were talking about earlier. So Elsewhere is a museum and artist residency that's set within a 3-4 former thrift store. So a lot of times what that means is that we do not get your traditional fine artists that do painting or illustration or sculpture. We get folks who might consider cooking their creative practice, might consider journalism or activism or organizing folks within a space as their creative practice. The challenges that we have with that is that Elsewhere was invented out of the necessity of Greensboro not having an artist residency program. That was in 2003. They had no agenda to start an art space. It just kind of happened within this old thrift store. They started inviting friends, and it just happened that those friends were creatives, and then they just started making art. And that's kind of evolved into our residency program right now that invites 40 artists from all over the world to come to Greensboro to do that kind of thing that you're talking about. Cook, create, draw, sing, and have all of that be part of your process and practice. Now the issue with that is that we're a nonprofit organization. And so we have a lot of limited resources, such as time and money. So the challenge that I see right now is how do we get to bring that experience to folks in Greensboro? How can we be more intentional and inclusive with our limited resources so that folks in Greensboro can come and co-create with us as opposed to just be a spectator? So that's kind of my answer to your question, that there are spaces like that. They're just very hard because we're all focused about selling the work a lot of times because there's bills to pay, right? But what we do know is that art is part of culture, and art can challenge and push culture. And to get political, I think that in Trump's America, it weighs double the work that we do as creatives. I'm humbled to be sitting up here with y'all. But because our work weighs double, especially in this time right here, right now, in the South, in North Carolina, in Greensboro of all places, knowing all of the different narratives and histories that have happened here in Greensboro, that we do need to be intentional about who we're including, who is at the table with us. And it can be very hard, it can be very challenging, but as long as we have that intention and we have that motive, then the ways are there. We can be inclusive. And not that Elsewhere is the most inclusive space in the world, but we're trying, we're attempting to be more equitable. One of the ways that we have done that, or have tried to do that, is through community partnerships. So in 2016, we had an official partnership with Black Lives Matter Greensboro, which was kind of formerly known as the Queer People of Color Collective. So through giving folks space, through having conversations with folks that might not always be easy, through trust and time, then maybe we can make a change.
And Elsewhere has done some of those blendings with food in the space, right? Like
Yeah,
party
totally.
events,
So not only do we host community dinners with community organizations like Red Chair Dinners or the Next Supper, but we consider every practice to be a creative practice. So when we cook, we consider that an artwork. And knowing that the art world can be very pretentious, we kind of try to level the playing field as opposed to amplifying some things and then not others.
I think you're one of the more inclusive spaces.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and I would say not just inclusive in terms of political or skin color or things like that, but age, exposure to art. I mean, I feel like so many people have had sort of formative experiences there who, I mean, I've known kids who came out and just their minds were blown by being in there. Like, this is the best place ever. And
I've never
I
ever
will.
planned.
Yes.
I would just like to add, and I think I'm taking up a lot of space, that we know that it is a white-founded organization, and it has been deeply embedded in white supremacy for a lot of years, and so we're trying to deconstruct that and undo that. And there's parts of East Greensboro that have not heard of Elsewhere. Any sort of skin tone doesn't matter, but there's people that have not been brought to the table, and until that work happens, the work is not done.
You're seeing everybody. We have another question out there.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the white supremacists? But I didn't realize how much of that was.
Well, it's just, what I mean by white supremacy is white culture.
Right.
And white culture, I guess, kind of being the only thing that's visible.
Mm-hmm.
And by having that be the only thing that's visible, it's attempting to erase a lot of other narratives and
Right.
histories. And so by having a space that is all white people, that makes it
Not so much
inaccessible
Yeah.
to people of color.
Yeah.
Or if you have a space that's all straight people, heteronormative people, then that makes that space inaccessible to queer folks.
Yeah.
And so the goal is not to be a diverse space, but to be an inclusive space.
That's an important comment, I think. Another question?
Hi, my name is Katie Hutchinson. I'm a graduating senior at A&T. I'm a graphic design major. And a lot of things that are on my mind right now is, as an art student, how do I make money? How will I survive? How will I pay off my student loans and everything? And this question is mainly directed towards Eliza and Sandra and Darlene as well, especially considering you guys kind of started a lot of your programs from the ground up and had to figure out how to make money and actually survive throughout that. So my question is for you guys, like, how do you manage to create a program that can also be lucrative as well as there for other artists and actually creating something that can be open for yourselves as well as other people? If you would be willing to share some of your stories as to how you guys started up and how it was like beginning the process of actually becoming successful.
We haven't heard much from you yet. Now that this is more talent, maybe you could start us off.
Sure, yeah. I started really, really small. I started in the basement of a coffee shop, and that was, I think, so I'm from Greensboro. I grew up here. I left for school. I lived in Boone for 5 years, and then I moved back. And I didn't know that I was going to move back to Greensboro. I really didn't think that I was. And when I did, I didn't think I was going to stay here. But I did. And then 2013 was like the year of mass migration of my friend group. I had 10 friends leave that year, and it was heartbreaking. It was really terrible, and I had to make some choices about, like, do I go to another city to see these opportunities that my friends see in other places, or do I sort of stick to the comfort of
just a little bit, because we can't hear you really well back.
Sure, I'll try. Do I stick to the comfort of what I have grown up with, and then use those connections that I have to create the things that I want to create? So that's what I decided to do, and I had been thinking about this idea for about 6 years. You know, it started as an art student at Appalachian, and you know, I worked in e-commerce for 4 years. I worked in a warehouse cutting fabric, and so I had a lot of time to think. And so this idea sort of developed, and I wanted to consider what are the needs of the community, what are my skills, what is something I can stand to do every single day, and then how do I make all of those things come together? So I announced that I wanted to do this idea of the both new and used art supply store. I announced it on Facebook, and I had a person that I had worked with in the past offer me part of his space, and it was really inexpensive, and it worked. So, you know, I just kind of built it up very, very gradually from there, and was able to expand into a bigger space, and start to involve, you know, in the bigger space, more community projects, inviting artists in to do projects, to have classes, and gallery wall, you know, for folks, you know, basically who have come to me and said, can I hang art on the wall? And I said yes. So I think for me, the thing that helped me do this initially was to have somebody who had resources say, I can share this with you. And so I think that is something that needs to be considered, you know, when we are, when we're working, and what can we share, what can we use that we have to bring other people with us, in creating, you know, the ideas that we have, because we're all really can have great ideas.
No, you go ahead. You're being my eagle. I'm just listening over here. What question do we have?
I was just going to add to that a little bit, sorry. It's just sparking a lot of passion, Italian passion. I think because applying your skill and applying your creativity in a business sense is just not taught in school. It's a significant issue and deficit in our country, and it's a real problem. I think the thing that I've learned the most, and to add to what you're saying, is asking for help. And just kind of leaving your ego at the door and just saying, listen, I cannot do this by myself. And if there's anybody out there at all that has any interest in this, you know, there could be some sort of reciprocity down the line. But at this point in time, I can't. And just surrendering to that, you know, that's been huge for me, because I don't ask for help easily. But once I started doing it, you know, I think my mom was great with this, because she was just like, there are people that want to help, and all they want is for you to ask. And so that, I think, is huge for people that are starting, is just not to be afraid to just kind of like let someone do that for you, you know?
Well, it sounds like from what y'all have said and I've observed, being part of a community in whatever sense we can define that for each of us
Right.
is critical.
Right.
And being out there and participating and learning and observing. I mean, maybe panel talk a little bit about what you, and we kind of have a sense of what you all offer. What's your perception when you work with people in the community and artists of what does supporting the arts really mean?
I wanted to add to it, to her question, and answer that question. I wrote my little notes because I forget things. But I just wanted to say that basically art or whatever you love is a process. And first you gotta find out what you're most passionate about. And you don't always make money from your passion, but if you stick to it, it will happen. And for me, just speaking as an artist perspective, I graduated from A&T, moved to Washington, D.C., lived my life, moved to New York, Atlanta, and I came back to Greensboro because I got the job teaching at A&T. But I knew when I moved back to Greensboro, I had a reason. I gave myself a 7-year plan. I was like, I don't want to live here forever. I'm coming back to give back to Greensboro, give back to my institution, and I'm gone. So I'm like, I'm 1 year behind because I'm supposed to be gone. But my mindset when I first came here is how can I build a name for myself? You have to think about how you build the name. So when people think about you as a graphic designer or you as a performing artist, because I know you personally, they have the first person they need to be thinking about is Katie. So what I did was I joined a bunch of organizations and then I volunteered a lot. And I did a lot of work for free. And I didn't speak to people when I got hired for projects. I went in and worked because I wanted to show everybody I have work ethic. I'm not gonna talk about it, I'm gonna be about it. So once I did that, I built a reputation. And just gonna give a small another example, teaching at A&T I've been there for 8 years, so I've helped 16 cohorts graduate, but I've also brought 16 cohorts to the Cultural Arts Center. So every semester, I'm bringing them to the Green Hill, to CVA, to the Atelier, to the Native American, and I tell them the story of each place. But that's how I really built a relationship with Edie, is because every time I turned around, I was at the space when nobody was there with my students, and I would not, she'd be busy, and I'd be like, hey, can Edie come out and talk to the students? You know, and I did that every time till she started smiling at me, like, hey, Darlene, how you doing? Hey. So it's like being visible, that really helps you get yourself out there. And then I agree with Cassandra, with me opening up the artist blog, I started very small. It was an Uptown Artworks gallery space, and I was a studio artist there, and one of my professors died. He left me $5,000 worth of art supplies or whatever. So I took that and I would sell it to the students, and I realized I could make money from it. So that was one of my visions, but my vision to move back to Greensboro was always to do that and open up the artist block. And I would say it to my students for 4 years, and they would say, McLean, you always talking about it. Be about it. And I would show them all the buildings. One of the buildings is where, right across the street from here, I want that building. I want that building. They was like, do it. We'll help you. And one day I just jumped out there and did it, and I started it with a $1,200 seed. And this month we're celebrating 4 years of business and service. And one of the main reasons why is the key, which you just said, is connecting with the community. And when the community doesn't come to you, you go to the community. And I think that's one area that Greensboro lacks. So they're saying, oh, I want diversity. Oh, I want this. But do you actually have flyers in your hand, hitting the streets, going out, talking to people, calling people? I do all that. When I have an event, I'll have about 700 to 1,000 people, and it's because I'm sitting there telemarketing and I'm hitting that street, walking up downtown Greensboro. You'll see my posters on, and then next 2 days later, they done ripped them down. But you really just gotta really work hard and really put yourself out there and let people know this is what I really wanna do. And once people, the community, because the community has to support you. And that's how you make money. That's what makes you great, is the community will come in and support you, but they have to know that you're serious about what you say you are. So it's about putting yourself out there and just really working hard to encourage you. She's about to graduate.
So, but that's hard too if you're an introvert, you know? Like, I mean, I'm very extroverted and I'm, involved in a lot, and I'm like, oh, what's that over there? I'm gonna go check it out. There's a party, I'm gonna go crash it, just people will become familiar with you and know that you are supporting, their thing, or, you might need, hey, like, oh, I don't know, I'm kind of all over the place, I'm sorry, but yeah, you just, putting yourself out there.
I want to add something to that, what Ty said, if you're an introvert. If you are an introvert, what I had to do is I got an art manager. If you're not a type of person that can get out there and sell yourself, you get a business person to do that for you, and you just be the artist, and they will help you make money. My art manager took me from making hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars doing private home art parties. And I set up for 15 minutes, and by the time I finished sitting down, I would sell like $1,200 worth of artwork.
Awesome.
Yeah. So get an art manager. Get somebody to represent you. Yeah.
Is there a central organizing entity for artists in Greensboro? Like a resource that's like, everyone's in the database and it's like or is it all these?
We're
trying to do that.
That's actually truthfully, we welcome feedback, but that's what we're trying to get to be. I think that's a great place for us as an organization. So please, now, later, anytime you have suggestions, let us know, because that is definitely in our year plan to get to some action on that.
Yeah, and so like, my name's Ivana, by the way, I'm the new gallery manager, but something that I've kind of been noticing is like a lot of us are from creative backgrounds, there's also a general reluctance to stay in Greensboro, like as creatives, and a lot of you have started your own businesses, which by the way is amazing,
Yes.
but because you saw and personally felt a need, and so, hopefully like we're in the middle of another question, but just I want to open it up a little bit to also be like critical of the space that we're in, and like because we all have front row seats to the ways in which there's a disconnect between a lot of art organizations and then artists ourselves or themselves, and so if you guys have like critical talking points, then like I think that we should encourage that too.
Yeah, I agree. I think what are the challenges, and where do artists need support and arts organizations need support that we don't get it? Open that up to anybody or even anyone out here who's got that.
Also, just as a very, very just starting block to that, I think that there's almost kind of like a stigma around the word art, like who gets to police what art is and who gets to police who an artist is. I think that's a big question. For me, growing up gender nonconforming and being undocumented, I felt like I was never going to be able to step inside of a space like elsewhere and be a part of that community, let alone work there, right? But I think that somewhere between where we define what art is and who an artist is and what's actually happening and who's getting to produce work and show work and talk about work, there has to be kind of like a bridge where we can kind of be inclusive about art production with everyone, not just whom we consider to be an artist.
And, okay. So I was gonna say, so I go to A&T as well, and I used to hold a position very high on the National Society of Black Engineers, and I had a good relationship with the chairperson. So one day I was talking with him, telling him about like my desires to blend arts, engineering, and all these other areas, and just knock down all the walls. And he was telling me, so STEM, right, used to be STEAM, which was science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and they took away the art. And I asked him why, and he was like, because art brings, the stigma is that art, because of its variations and the fact that it can be as pretentious as one wants and also be as grungy or be as variation in value, it brings down the set values that society has on science, technology,
That's kind of the beauty of it.
Right. And that's where I'm at, is that the fact of the matter is because art is so fluctuating, it's the blend that stops people from putting things in boxes. And that's why I'm so bent on like, what I want to do is develop like a bunch of different community centers. What I really want to do is like buy a bunch of foreclosed houses and turn them into art, engineering spaces, businesses, and like help people bring up entrepreneurship. That's what I want to do in Greensboro. But the problem with that is that a lot of people won't do things like invest, and I was going to say that like fiscally, of course, like a lot of people don't necessarily, art is pretty to look at, but they don't believe in it enough to invest in it. Or art is beautiful, and it's great to decorate our homes with it, but it's not worth what the person is asking for. Then there's also a flip side where it's worth more than what they're asking for. But I think the problem is that people don't want to understand art as it is, they want to understand it as they view it. And because there's so many different viewpoints, it just makes it hard to put it in whatever area.
Well, I think that too, in a community like Greensboro that does have such a long history of various difficult topics that have to be addressed over the years and are continuing that way, people who are well-intentioned think, oh, well, we have to deal with homeless, or we have to deal with education, or we have to deal with whatever it may be, and don't get that connection that art can be a vehicle for that. It can be that thing that brings information. It can be that talking point. It can be that reshaping of narrative. It can be including people. So I think you're addressing a great point. The STEAM, I get on a soapbox about that all the time.
I remember it going. It's what attracted me to being an engineer. I used to want to be, so I'm an electrical engineering student. I used to want to be an architectural engineering student simply because it was the most basic to me fusion of arts and engineering, because I didn't want to design little buildings in like just regular schools. I wanted to design these crazy, innovative like spaces where like walls move and things change in the space, and kind of making it so that you're living or walking around or working in art. And it's like that kind of stuff. But
Sounds like you're still on track.
they'll be impressed, but I mean, it's whatever. But yeah, I wanted to talk about, or I wanted to see like, am I just crazy, or is that something?
No, that sounds great. I think the points that you're bringing up are really important. Like, what's the balance, what's the line that we're straddling where we over-glorify art, or simply just glorify art, or to where we're not valuing it.
Yes.
We're not paying artists, we're just giving them exposure.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to tell people
To what you're saying, so something that the art world lacks is just one database with all of the money. all of the grants, whether they be international, federal, state, local, councils, artist residencies, like get fellowships, scholarships. What would be really great, because it could be very hard to define who's an artist, for Greensboro, I think what Greensboro artists could need might be some sort of database where we can kind of get all the money and the resources in one spot.
Yeah.
And maybe some of us that are here can work on that.
I'm jumping in too, but I think that brings up collaboration too, that I think if there's a central database that also gives, it should, in my view, bring opportunities for people to learn about each other. And you know, if you're applying for a grant for some project, then maybe you also are. What if there's a way to make it even bigger and more helpful, more productive, whatever that may be? What else?
See those houses.
I do too. I want to live in Greensboro. And so what other, I don't want to keep us going too much longer over time here because I know people have places to be, but just maybe for this part, just kind of get that last question of what else do you think organizations need to do to support artists? What does that look like to you? And then we'll maybe have a few more minutes for some more questions. Does that sound reasonable? You wanna, how about start with you again at that end?
Okay, so what can organizations do to provide more opportunities?
Or yeah, to support, what does that look like?
Okay. I think that this is something Devin and I have talked about some, is providing sort of like different levels of opportunity where people who are maybe new, haven't had a lot of experience, don't have a lot of connections, can come in and say, hey, here's something I do, I'm really into. Maybe it's not that refined, like teach me how to get my artwork in a gallery. Teach me how to, refine the, idea that I have going on in my work right now so that it is a cohesive body of work. Universities play a role in that, of course, but that's not always accessible people. So I think that we need to have a community resource for that. And then that way, when we have sort of relationships and avenues where we can, connect people with different opportunities, it's, there's kind of a way forward. You can see a way forward with, having your work seen, I think. So that's something I've just been thinking about a lot. It's not a refined idea, but, I'm thinking about it.
Great point. How about you, Amy? What are your thoughts about what organizations can do?
Well, I mean, one thing to think about is that every community has a kind of, the arts organizations fit together in different ways, and every community has its own unique geography. And one thing that's distinctive about Green Hill, and that was a kind of a shock to me when I first came there as a curator, is that we are regional, that our mission is the North Carolina artists. And since I've been at Green Hill, we've tried to stretch that definition as far as it can go. But it's an interesting thing to work with when you think about the art world as being a kind of an open system where, the ideal would be to have these exchanges with everyone and going back and forth. And it's hard to create an exchange or, to travel a show if you can't take the other city's show or the other state's show because they aren't North Carolina. We're North Carolina. So my challenge has always been how to create those opportunities for North Carolina-based artists or artists that, have a meaningful connection to North Carolina. And that's something that I still, kind of work with. I do think that, among all the organizations here, that there could be more resources for artists. I think one resource that I think that artists could use, for example, would be we could all kind of come in and help artists get, for example, professional photography of their work. Like that's something that I think almost every artist could use. And how do we get together and you could imagine a day where it would be more, be less expensive to hire a photographer and set up a studio and this, in the cultural center and just have artists like who knew about it. And that's the sort of outreach that I think that, that I don't personally am not able to like carve out the time to do, but I think if there was a group of organizations, we could do that.
Right, and again, some of that I would say is something we as an organization are trying to figure out what those most important areas are that we can help provide opportunities like that. And I think photography is an interesting challenge too, particularly when you have art that does not fit the hang it on a wall or stand it on a pedestal too. And I know there are some amazing installations, there are some fantastic performance artists, and it's really hard to, even professional photographers have a hard time with some of that. So I think that's a real need out there too, sort of a side note. But yeah, Chris, photographers. Chris here's our videographer and a wonderful photographer as well.
And not only photography, but just understanding the materials that artists are using and consider their potential ephemeral quality.
Yes.
And, that newsprint is not going to last. It's going to degrade. It's degrading as, it sits there, it's going to fade or it's going to darken or something's going to fade or, exposure to light. Like this is the conservator. I've got my conservator hat on. And
That's a fantastic point.
And, I'm here, I'm a resource. I can tell you, if you have questions, like proper framing and matting and, that kind of thing. And you're a framer too. So,
I think that may be an awareness too, helping artists understand, okay, maybe you want that newsprint in this piece because you need it in there, but what can you do to help it last? How can you treat that material? And then that adds to value of the piece over time because it's not yellowing and falling apart.
And it could be that something isn't meant to be to last, and that's the artist's intention.
Sure.
That's okay too.
Sure.
I know we're talking about like a way to connect people, artists and patrons, and social media is a huge part of our lives now. And is it something as simple as a Facebook page that connects Greensboro artists with Greensboro conservators, photographers, upcoming photographers, reaching out to schools, RCC, that have photography programs, and linking people and just putting what's available and what's needed in a really available context.
Like a digestible format.
Yeah, I'm a small business owner downtown, and we try to provide art. We provide mostly visual art, and we install it. I'm an interior designer, so like we do a lot of abstract art, and we work with Greensboro artists mostly. And when anybody shows up or hits us up on Instagram, we're like, come in, let's talk, let's find a way. If we can't put you on our walls right now, we probably have a place where we can find for you. And downtown Greensboro does First Fridays, and they're always trying to connect that with art. And I think that we're missing out a little bit, not connecting with some downtown businesses that have blank wall spaces or just access where people are coming in and visibility.
With Central Gallery, I mean, this year, the artists that I invited to show, it was really, like, they got all the sales. And we promoted it, we printed the postcard, we designed the postcard, we designed the gallery poster, we pushed it out on social media. And I was like, if you want to have a reception, which is a good idea, it's on you, like you have to pay for that, but you got me there, I'll be there, and with the ice and the tables and the, whatever, and, supporting you and like getting your name out there. And we've had some really great response from, being able to share these incredible artists with Greensboro and beyond.
So some of it is place then. So some of it is place to show, place to have people come. That's a need, it sounds like. What about
one of your artists, your most recent artist mentioned that directly about providing space.
Yeah, space. Yeah. Artists need space desperately.
Well, we had a month-long residency here that was sort of a response to some of that from our perspective, and it went really well, and we want to continue doing that sort of thing, because even if it is for a temporary period of time, somebody may want to not work at their kitchen table on a big piece, or may not have room in their dining room for a sculpture they're working on. So I feel like we're all, I know Cassandra, you've mentioned that too, I think we're all hearing that space and access to space that people can work in and not feel pressured by the constraints is really helpful. What else do you think about?
That's what I was going to say, just creative spaces and platforms. And I think that's one of the things that the Artist Block does is we create a platform for performing artists. So they feel free to come and perform, dance, play. Devin's in my house band. So I think it's just about giving them artists, all types of artists, spaces and platforms to be free and not be in a judgmental zone. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I think even just like the opportunity to create, kind of going back to what Guy was saying earlier, like we're in a point in our global history where everything is on fire, so being able to actually come together and co-create together, I think is really important and a critical piece of resistance, and also sharing stories with each other. And so that's another form of melding that can happen just by sitting on the same panel or painting a wall together, and then you're like, oh, what did you do today? I don't know, painted a wall, which also contributes to this idea of ownership and community ownership and meaning. And then also being willing to stand up and protect and be in solidarity with the people in your community who are co-creating these spaces. And so I think that the arts can be incredibly transformative if we allow them to be, and not just simply limit them to vapid images that are pretty, but that's it. As my grandmother said, looks fade, character doesn't.
I did at one point, I think there was one person in the back.
Question back there?
I don't want to
It
put you on
wasn't
the
a
spot.
question, I was going to make a comment that what we have been talking about is opening up new conversations for artists across the Piedmont or Guilford County, whatever is included in the Greensboro area. Began right here with this show, because I've never seen this many artists coming out to the CBA in the 8 years that I've been a member.
Well, thank you for saying that. We've found it inspirational. I think everybody who works here, and we've had tremendous foot traffic, people who maybe haven't, maybe this is their cousin or their nephew or their friend, and it's brought them in here, it's brought them into Green Hill and the Atelier because they're in the
challenge
building.
is then to continue
To
this
keep that.
movement forward.
Yes, I agree.
Because I think for a lot of us, and a lot of us that are here today, like art is very synonymous with community, like this, for example, like we're here making a community right now, talking about all these really important issues, and so, and like we all see art is, that's where we see like the value in art, probably, like, I mean, I'll speak for like myself and our organization, and so it's really nice to be able to, I think I'm going on a tangent and not asking a question, but I just wanted to like add on to that,
I think that was kind of a nice summary in a way that art needs to be a vital part of the community, but it's sort of a chicken and egg thing in a way that the community needs to be the art and the art needs to be the community at the same time. And who has a say in art? It sounds like this group would, and I don't want to speak too much for you, but would say art needs to be something everybody can speak. It needs to be part of everybody's narrative, everybody's experience in some way, and that contributes to solving problems. I'm sounding, like Pollyanna here, but solving problems and confronting very real issues and healing, and both on a personal level and on a community level. And I mean, I'll get teary about it, but I think it's really, these are important conversations. And I feel like we only scratched the surface with this wonderful panel. And Guy has something to add. Were there any other audience questions that we need to?
I have a question. I'd love to know where you guys get your bagels in the morning or your glass of wine at night, or a cup of coffee in the middle of the day. I'll come and visit and meet you there.
I love it.
I'll see you there. We can talk.
I love it.
And then go away. Maybe there's a common place that everyone goes to. I don't know where any of you guys go. I've never met you.
Actually, that's a great point, because that's community right there. That's a great.
Yeah, the woman that started the Green Bean almost came. That would have been or elsewhere.
We were gonna have a representative from Green Bean here, and that would have been a perfect segue there.
We're still gonna meet there.
Absolutely, she would love it if we did. But you, I know.
Oh, no, I just wanted to add, that would be great if we could all connect. I wanted to bring up this thing that happened. I received an email from a local artist who had a beautiful painting, and he really wanted to sell it at elsewhere. And I felt awful, but the work that we show that is visual and material, it's made with our museum collection, and none of it is for sale. So I felt like it wasn't really the place for him to sell a painting. So I came up with a really long list of all of the art spaces in the city, not only the ones downtown, but Artist Block, People's Perk, Real Hawaiian Wine Bar, Something's Bistro. And I think that having something at all of our brick and mortar spaces, like a little printout, had a list of all of these art spaces and organizations would be really nice. So if you get a theater artist that comes in, you can say, hey, here's CTG, here's Scrap Metal Theater Company, here's Triad Stage. If you have a sculptor, a ceramist, what have you. And then two more things that I did want to add onto what local artists need. I think that jobs, of course, is right. And I was fortunate enough to not have a college degree and to have an organization that believed in me and invested in me, and I'm still working there somehow. But yeah, jobs. I think authentic connections. So like, how are you? How have you been? A smile or a frown, or just being authentic and being in that moment, I think is really important. And then I think also challenging and pushing local artists because of accessibility or because of reason A or reason B, we don't all have the same education or production. And so to push each other, I think, and challenge each other, and grow with each other is something that's also really important.
Can I just throw in to second your comment about having some type of list of resources, because such a cross section of the art and craft making people of Greensboro come to me, I find myself writing these lists off the top of my head.
And we're doing it the
all
same.
the
I did that work in
We
the
need
morning.
to add their list to our list, and then that'll be a fantastic start.
Yeah, so maybe something we can take away from that is more collaboration amongst organizations too. Like maybe that would actually help support artists.
I have a copy of the gallery guide that was produced by Arts Greensboro about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
but it was never kept up, and
Yes,
the
and that's
landscape's
it. We've
changing.
missed that.
So, you know, I think we could do it for ourselves.
I think we have to.
And I think Arts Greensboro would probably be missing some really important spaces in the
Yeah,
communities too.
Phil, that's me.
Unfortunately.
I just want to go back to that because what is the best platform to make that happen? Is it just a website or is it using existing social media platforms already or Google Docs or, yeah, I mean, what?
There's limitations to everything.
It sounds like a new league or organization might need. Because I'm thinking Google, I just love Google. Google Docs is probably, because the spaces might fluctuate and things change and things happen.
I think publishing something at the library also. I mean,
Yeah.
even just things that are pedestrian accessible, because, I mean, I was fortunate enough to help install this show, and I wasn't here the day that Devin received some art from someone, and she was pretty certain that she had seen him living on the streets. And he's one of the most talented artists in here. And I'm coming from a, you know, whatever, academia or whatever bullshit. But, and he seriously is one of the most talented artists in here. And who knows how he found out about the program. It's $2 to submit a piece of work, you know? And so I think making it so that it is accessible to I do feel strongly about having a paper document. And I think online is important, but paper documentation is really important too. A lot of people don't have that access.
I was going to suggest keeping it up on a paper, keeping it up on a Google document, but then actually having like a printed document, and periodic update. Yeah, periodic updates, like maybe every 3 months, just recycle and just make sure that everything's up to date, consistent across the board. So it's not like, if I go to elsewhere, then I'm going to know about this place, but if I don't go there, then I'm not going to know about this place.
And even though the city's small, I do wish, like other cities, we had kind of an animated or some sort of humorous map that was accessible, right? Do it, make one. And just having like little icons on the map, be like, these are all the arts related facilities, and this is where you could go to visit.
Everything notes
about that.
Well, you know.
But I do know that there's the Spark Grant. I don't know how many folks are familiar with the Spark Grant. Tell everyone that you know about it. It's started by, I believe it's DGI, Downtown Greensboro Incorporated, and it's Greensboro. Essentially, you can apply for a grant. And as long as you're not making profits off of it, it can be for anything. So I say that maybe we get this started and we get each other's emails, and maybe we see about getting a little pamphlet up on our bus stations and our buses.
That would be so awesome.
So not only does it travel around in Greensboro, but it goes in the park bus, it can go to Winston, it can go to High Point, and really get the word out about the great things that are happening in Greensboro.
I was thinking about it from the standpoint of actually being able to feature different artists, like maybe put out different posters or something that would be like advertising some type of the submission for events like this, and have the featured artists create the promotion for it, and maybe somewhere at the bottom of it, this flyer was created by so and so.
That's a great idea.
That person could actually get the love from that.
Yeah, like that. Well, yeah, and then I think we could probably talk for hours in this group. We've only scratched the surface of a lot of really important issues, and I think that inspires me that we at the CBA need to do more of these things, more of these times for people to get together and share. From our panelists, any last thoughts? Maybe just go down the line real quick, and then we can I'm putting you on the
There's
spot
so
again.
much that could be said.
I know, I'm sorry, I know, it's hard.
I mean, because like, it could be like talking about like how people are like, oh, we'll pay you an exposure, and it's like, no, you wouldn't pay a doctor an exposure. Or like, again, this piece about like what is art and like the process, like it took me a long time to get to the point to identify as an artist, and it's like, because my process in relation to like how we create art, like that's the role I play, even though I'm not like the visual artist, but it's still, you know, important, just like the people, just keeping the people central to everything.
And I would just say just being empowered, inspired to do you, and just utilize your resources and just keep creating.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else.
That's okay.
Yeah. I don't know if I have much else except, you know, we have a show going up Friday in Central Gallery. Judy Bastian, she's a
She has some stuff in here, actually.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Amazing,
Like her,
yes.
you know, we think of quilts a certain way, like kind of old timey. Well, her work is
It is
insane.
phenomenal.
There's like a little
There's
flyer thingy, stuff.
there's two pieces here, right? We have two here in this show.
Okay, say something.
I think I have something to say, y'all. What was I going to say? I was going to say, yeah. Like I said, I talked about the challenges that Elsewhere has in bringing folks in and not really investing in local artists. That is something that we're trying to change, so please stay tuned. Our hours are changing soon in September, and the goal for that is that we're going to have one night that is designated for local artists. So whether it's an open mic night, or you want to show your work, or you want to do live painting, or you want to host a workshop, we're going to have one night every week where it's devoted to that. And then the dream, the goal, is to incorporate local artists into the artist residency program. So not only are we bringing in 5 artists from all over the world, but ideally there would be one Greensboro artist in there to help not only grow networks, but also grow practice as well.
I'm with you.
Everyone.
Well, I'd just like to end by saying, I know many of you, but if you are a North Carolina artist and I don't know you, I would like to get to know you. So, you know, take the opportunity to talk to me, to come meet me. And I'd like to just throw out again the Saturday review that we still are looking for a couple more people. That's a really good opportunity, not only to talk about your work with me, but also with a community of 15 other artists.
It's a great opportunity. What's your
Yeah, similar. So I have a ton of ideas and not enough time to do them all. So I'm always looking for people to work with to help activate my space. So for example, people to teach classes and workshops, people to do, you know, a collaborative project in the back room that might be open to the community to participate. And, you know, other ideas that I haven't even thought of, but that could somehow work. I'm always interested in hearing people's ideas, figuring out how to make them happen. Even if it's not me or my space helping to make it happen, like I just, you know, that's part of my role as I see it. So I want to keep doing that.
You're a connector.
Yeah.
One more solid way you can support if anyone likes burritos, on the 26th, from like 5 to 8, we're on Tate Street at that Chipotle where the benefactor could go buy a burrito or two, say it's for the mural project, you'll get like 10% of your burrito money.
That's nice.
So,
That's awesome.
Tell your friends, bring
When is that?
Sunday the 26th, 5 to 8.
It's on Facebook, right?
Yes, it is.
Well, a very big thank you to all of the panelists for your time. Thank you for coming, and if you have time to come back for the next panel, which will be involving multiculturalism in the arts. That's going to be, you're going to moderate that, right? So it's going to be a pretty neat experience too, and stay stay tuned with us and share your ideas with us as we continue to try to do things like this and have shows like this and encourage people. That's really what we're trying to be about. Thank y'all. Hand for the audience.
If you would write down their contact info, we have like a book in the front, so we can stay connected with you guys.
Yeah, and that can be a nice start if you're willing, a nice start to sharing information and